the discovery. Samantha stood in their kitchen, surrounded by the aroma of fresh basil and garlic, as she prepared what she hoped would be a memorable evening. The soft glow of candlelight danced across the marble countertops while she carefully arranged the table with rose petals and fine china. She had been planning this dinner for weeks, knowing that Ethan would return from his business trip today, and she wanted to celebrate the precious life growing inside her belly. Their baby was due in just 6 weeks, and she felt an overwhelming need to reconnect with her husband during these final months of pregnancy. Her phone buzzed with a text notification, causing her heart to flutter with anticipation. But when she read the message, her excitement turned to confusion. Ethan wrote that he would be working late at the hotel and might not make it home until tomorrow morning. Working late seemed unusual, since his meetings were supposed to end at 5 o'clock. Samantha felt a small knot of worry form in her chest, but she pushed it aside, trying not to let pregnancy hormones fuel unnecessary anxiety. As the evening progressed, Samantha found herself scrolling through their credit card statements on her laptop. Something caught her attention. An expensive charge at a jewelry store appeared 3 weeks ago when Ethan claimed to be traveling alone to Chicago. Her breath caught in her throat when she realized she had never received any gifts. At the same time, she discovered hotel charges that seemed excessive for a business trip. Her intuition screamed at her that something was deeply wrong. Her hands trembled as she opened Ethan's computer, finding his email history. The evidence was there in black and white. Emails from Emily, a colleague at his firm, were filled with affectionate language and intimate plans. Samantha felt her heart shatter into 1,000 pieces as she read through their correspondence. The words burned into her mind, painting a picture of betrayal that made her feel physically ill. Unable to sit still and consumed by the need for answers, Samantha made a decision that would change everything. She grabbed her purse and headed toward the Grand Plaza Hotel, where Ethan had supposedly been staying. Her pregnant body felt heavy as she drove through the night streets, but adrenaline kept her moving. The closer she got to the hotel, the more her heart raced. With trembling hands, she parked her car and walked toward the entrance, knowing that the answer she was about to discover would alter her life forever. She took the elevator to the 5th floor where her husband was registered and walked down the hallway that suddenly felt like a tunnel leading to her worst nightmare.
The confrontation. Samantha stood outside room 512, her hand trembling as she raised it toward the door, number etched in gold. She could hear muffled voices from inside, and her stomach lurched with dread. Taking a deep breath, she knocked loudly and waited. The voices inside stopped abruptly, followed by urgent whispers that made her blood run cold. The door swung open, and there stood her husband, Ethan, his shirt unbuttoned, his hair disheveled, and his face training of all color when he saw her. His mouth open and closed like a fish, searching for words that would never come. Behind him on the bed, half-dressed and scrambling to cover herself, was Emily, the same Emily who had smiled at Samantha at the office holiday party just months ago, the woman who had seemed like a devoted professional colleague. The betrayal cut deeper than any knife could possibly wound. Samantha felt her legs weaken, but her protective maternal instinct kept her upright. One hand instinctively moved to protect her unborn child, while the other gripped the door frame. Ethan stepped into the hallway, desperately trying to close the door behind him, but Samantha pushed her way inside. Her voice emerged as a strangled cry filled with pain and fury that she did not know she possessed. She demanded answers that tumbled from Ethan's lips in fragmented excuses and hollow apologies that rang empty in her ears. He claimed it meant nothing. He swore it was just a temporary weakness brought on by stress from work, but his words felt like more knives stabbing into her already shattered heart. Emily remained on the bed, silently watching the scene unfold with a mixture of guilt and defiance that ignited Samantha's rage. Samantha turned to face Emily directly, asking with a deadly calm voice why she had betrayed their friendship and the trust Samantha had placed in her. Emily stood up, wrapping the sheet around her body, and attempted to justify her actions, claiming that Ethan had told her he and Samantha were having problems, that their marriage was already broken beyond repair. Hearing him speak such lies about their relationship fueled Samantha's anger even more. She had been nothing but a devoted wife despite her struggles with pregnancy, exhaustion, and the physical changes her body was experiencing. The room erupted into chaos as all three voices overlapped in accusations and denials. Ethan desperately reached for Samantha's hand, begging her to listen to him, but she recoiled from his touch as if it had burned her. He tried to explain that he had never stopped loving her, that this was a mistake made in a moment of weakness, but she could not bear to hear his excuses anymore. Her pregnancy suddenly felt heavier, as if the weight of his betrayal was pressing down upon her already vulnerable body. She looked into his eyes and saw a stranger staring back at her.
The breaking point. Samantha backed toward the door, her entire body trembling with a combination of rage and devastating heartbreak. She felt tears streaming down her face, but she refused to let either of them see her completely break down. Not yet. Not while she was still standing in that room. She needed to get out. She needed air. She needed space to process the destruction of everything she believed in. Everything she had built with Ethan suddenly felt like an illusion, a beautiful lie that had crumbled in a single moment. Ethan followed her into the hallway, desperately pleading with her to stay, to talk, to give him a chance to make things right. But his words fell on deaf ears. Samantha could barely comprehend what he was saying. Her mind raced with thoughts of their wedding day, the promises they had made to each other, the dreams they had shared about building a family together. None of it seemed real anymore. It all felt tainted by his betrayal. She walked toward the elevator with Ethan following her, trying to grab her arm, but she pulled away with surprising strength. As she waited for the elevator to arrive, Samantha allowed herself to truly feel the magnitude of what had just happened. She was 8 months pregnant, carrying their child, and her husband had been living a double life. The realization crashed over her like a tidal wave, threatening to pull her under. She pressed the elevator button again, her finger jabbing it repeatedly as if that would make it come faster. Ethan stood beside her, desperately murmuring apologies and explanations, but she refused to look at him. In the car driving home, Samantha felt as though she were driving through a dream. The streets seemed unfamiliar, even though she knew them well. Her hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly that her knuckles turned white. Tears continued to fall, but she was numb to them. Her phone buzzed repeatedly with messages and calls from Ethan, but she silenced it. The carefully prepared dinner at home was waiting for her, but now it felt like a monument to her naivety and broken dreams. When she arrived home, Samantha walked past the dining room table without looking at the roses or the candles. She climbed the stairs to their bedroom and locked the door behind her, collapsing onto the mattress that suddenly felt foreign and unsafe. She curled around her unborn child, the one person in her life who had never betrayed her trust, and allowed herself to truly grieve. Not just for the loss of her marriage, but for the future she had envisioned, shattered into a million irreparable pieces. Her baby deserved better, her future deserved better, and somewhere deep inside, despite the overwhelming pain, Samantha realized that perhaps she deserved better too.
The Reckoning. 3 days passed in a blur of tears, anger, and sleepless nights. Samantha had not responded to any of Ethan's calls, texts, or attempts to see her. He had shown up at the house twice, but she refused to open the door, knowing that facing him again would only prolong her suffering. Her best friend Rachel had finally convinced her to open up about what happened and immediately rushed over to support her. Through her tears, Samantha recounted every detail of that horrible night, and Rachel held her as she sobbed into her shoulders. On the 4th morning, Samantha woke with a newfound determination coursing through her veins. The initial shock and paralysis had transformed into something stronger than despair. It had become resolve. She called her lawyer, Margaret, a sharp, intelligent woman who specialized in family law, and scheduled an emergency appointment. Samantha knew she could not stay in this marriage, could not raise her child in a home built on deception and betrayal. She needed to protect herself and her unborn baby, and that meant taking action. When Ethan finally cornered her at the grocery store a week later, he was disheveled and desperate. His eyes were red-rimmed, and his normally pristine appearance had deteriorated significantly. He begged her to come home, to talk, to work things out, promising that he would end things with Emily, that it had all been a terrible mistake. But Samantha looked at him with eyes that had been hardened by his betrayal. She calmly told him that she had already spoken to a lawyer and that he would be hearing from her legal team soon. His face went pale as he realized that she was serious, that there was no going back. She explained with surprising calmness that she could not trust him anymore, that the foundation of their marriage had crumbled beneath them like sand. She spoke about her baby, about the child who deserved to grow up, knowing that their mother had chosen dignity and strength over pathetic attempts at reconciliation. Ethan tried to reach for her hand, but she stepped away. Her voice remained steady as she told him that he had made his choices, and now he would have to live with the consequences. That evening, Samantha stood in front of the mirror, looking at her reflection. She barely recognized the woman staring back at her, but there was something different in her eyes. A strength that had been dormant was now awakening. She placed her hands on her pregnant belly and promised her unborn child that she would be strong for both of them. She had discovered the painful truth, but she had also discovered something far more valuable. She had discovered her own resilience and power.
New beginnings. 6 weeks later, Samantha gave birth to a beautiful baby girl she named Grace. The moment the nurse placed her daughter in her arms, everything changed. A fierce, protective love flooded through her that made all the pain of the past months seem insignificant. Grace was her priority now, and Samantha was determined to build a beautiful life for the two of them. The divorce proceedings had been emotionally draining, but Samantha emerged victorious, with full custody of Grace and a settlement that would ensure financial security for her and her daughter. Ethan had tried desperately to maintain contact, but Samantha had learned the importance of boundaries. She was civil but distant, allowing supervised visits only when necessary for Grace's well-being. Her focus was entirely on healing and moving forward. 3 months after Grace's birth, Samantha had returned to work with a new perspective on life. She had also started therapy to process the trauma of Ethan's betrayal and to build her confidence back up. Rachel had introduced her to a support group for women who had experienced similar betrayals, and Samantha found solace in sharing her story with others who truly understood her pain. One evening, as Samantha rocked Grace to sleep, she reflected on how much her life had changed. She thought about the woman she used to be before the betrayal, the one who planned elaborate dinners and desperately sought her husband's approval. That version of herself felt like a lifetime ago. Now she was someone different, stronger, more aware of her own worth, and more protective of her peace. Several months later, at a coffee shop near her office, Samantha unexpectedly ran into Emily. The woman looked uncomfortable and tried to quickly leave, but Samantha found the courage to approach her. Emily seemed shocked that Samantha wanted to speak with her, but what happened next was unexpected. Samantha told Emily that she had forgiven her, not for Emily's sake, but for her own. She explained that holding on to anger was only hurting herself and Grace, and that she had chosen peace instead. Emily apologized genuinely, seeming to have experienced her own reckoning about her actions. As Samantha walked back to her car with Grace, safely in her carrier, she felt a weight lift from her shoulders. She had survived the worst betrayal imaginable and had emerged not broken, but reborn. She thought about the journey that had brought her to this moment, from the hopeful woman planning a surprise dinner to the strong, independent mother raising her daughter with purpose. She had lost a marriage, but gained something infinitely more valuable. She had found herself.